When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Yes, hello there. Good morning, everybody out there in Join Up Dots land. How are we? This is episode 112. 112. I just feel really passionate. It's funny because I've been doing these shows all day. I've done 9 back to back. And you kind of know, and I suppose it's the theme of the show, when you're doing something that is your unique self, that you don't get tired. It's a real weird feeling. And I'm sure we're going to touch on that with our guest today, because he is somebody that seems to have a lot of zig and zag in him. He is a mover and shaker, and he is an entrepreneur from heart, really. He's another example of someone who seems to have been born with the skills to make their own money. At a very early age, whilst his friends were going the normal route to get jobs by creating resumes and attending interview after interview, he had other ideas. He realised that the only person who was going to get wealthy in that scenario would be the employer, not the employee. So he set off on an entrepreneurial path to start making his own money, and at quite an early age too. At the age of 11, you could find him selling his personal snacks at Scout Camp, and by age of 17, he'd hired his friends to help him operate his landscaping business that earned him 10 grand for college. All in all, this is amazing. By age 20, he started and ran over 320,000 in businesses. But that was just the start of it all, as he realised that the skills that he had built up were transferable and, most importantly, teachable. So he began teaching other college students to run their own successful businesses, which led him to receive the Entrepreneur of the Year award from young entrepreneurs across America. And he now speaks to students across the country, teaching them the lessons he's learned as a young entrepreneur and encouraging them to take the entrepreneurial leap. So, question time. How has he managed to take the leap of faith himself that for many seems too big to handle? And how did he persuade a bunch of 17-year-olds to work for him? I can't get my kids to do anything, even if I pay them. Well, let's find out as we start joining up dots with the one and only Chandler Bolt. How are you, Chandler?
Great, David. That was a heck of an introduction. I don't know if I know that guy.
I'm running out of energy, but it's true, actually. You know, I've been doing this since 9 o'clock this morning. It's now just gone over 9 o'clock at night. And if you are doing something that you believe is providing value or is your thing that you should be doing, you kind of don't get tired until you stop, and then it's you zonk out. Did you find that true?
I know the feeling. I definitely know the feeling. I'm in the middle of one of those right now, and I've been in some pretty intense phases of that before, like with some of my first businesses I'm sure we'll talk about.
I look back on my life now when I would be sitting there at like 9:30 in the morning thinking, God, I'm tired, I need a coffee. And I think really, looking back on it with the knowledge I've got now, that was a clue. That was a big clue that I wasn't in the right place. But you just don't know at that time. You just don't know that your energy level should be higher because it's just what you do for a living. It's just the job you go to. Do you see lots of people in that same kind of state when you're talking to them and they're just kind of submerged in this kind of apathy and tiredness that really, for their age, they shouldn't be feeling?
Oh, for sure. It's one of those things where, so I obviously try not to surround myself with people like that because that's not inspiring at all. But when you just, I have found a lot of people like that, and it's really one of those things where I think if you don't wake up and just want to jump out of bed in the morning to do what you're doing, then you're probably doing the wrong thing. You're probably not doing what your heart really wants you to do and what you know you should be doing.
I used to think to myself, oh, it's another morning. And now I think, yes, it's another morning. So that's good, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like I hear somebody say another day, another dollar, and I just want to shoot them. It's like, that seems miserable.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, you have been somebody who's quite interested in the dollars, though, haven't you? You know, even at an early age, you was flexing your hustle muscle and selling bits and bobs at Scout Camp and hiring your friends and that. So money obviously is something that sets you alight, but it's only part of the story with you, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. It's, honestly, money's never been the end goal. I've always just enjoyed the game. I'm I'm pretty much unemployable. So just when I got that first taste at an early age of making my own money and then kind of kept leveling up and leveling up. And each time I got a little bigger taste of making my own money, I just thought to myself, I'm like, I can never go back to working for someone and having someone control my destiny. Like, I just love the fun of building things from nothing and knowing that at the end of the day, what I created is putting money in my pocket. And I don't chase money. I make decisions based on like personal growth, but like the money's a good part of it. But I think it's more the fact that I just love the game. And I love just how much more fun it is. You know, it's like the entrepreneurial roller coaster.
So you would say that you were totally unemployable now?
I think so. I feel like I would make a miserable employee unless it was a really cool company and they could put me in a fun, maybe marketing job or somewhere where I was almost like an entrepreneur. Like, you've probably heard of that, like an entrepreneur inside of a business, and they kind of give you some freedom and give you some reins and let you run with it. That would probably be the only way.
That's actually one of my pet hates, that people stick preneur after everything now. Don't you? You get solopreneur, entrepreneur, intrapreneur. It just seems to be the key thing to stick that on the end of any word and make a new word of it. It's
a buzzword, right?
I heard one
because everybody wants to be entrepreneurs.
Yeah, lifestylepreneur. No, you don't have lifestylepreneur, do you? You can have lifestylist or lifestyle designer, but you can't just put preneur on the end of that.
I think it's everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, so it's kind of a hot thing right now, and yeah, they see this glamorous lifestyle, so they want it.
But it's not glamorous. I went into this with the open eyes of a child, basically, and I was over 40. I should have known better. I didn't appreciate how much work goes into being an entrepreneur. It is frightening. I heard a stat the other day, or a phrase, and I've used this before, and I think it's so apt, but an entrepreneur is somebody who will willingly work 100 hours a week for themselves because they won't work 40 hours a week for somebody else. And that's about it, isn't it?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Do you ever have times when you sort of look at it and you go, no, actually, I just need to get away from this? Because when you are in your frame of work, kind of life and play becomes one and the same. So do you ever have times when you go, no, I really need to separate myself and get some distance between my day-to-day working habits?
Definitely. It definitely becomes a point. And yeah, it's weird. I was talking with someone the other day, and we were talking about how it really takes an extreme amount of self-discipline to live the undisciplined life that we live as entrepreneurs, and especially like working from your home. Like, it's weird how it takes discipline to not have any discipline. You know, like I have to be super disciplined. I have to, wake up early, focus on my business, all that stuff. But at the same time, I can make undisciplined choices. Like, I can go wherever I want, whenever I want. All those options are available, and I can just hop on a plane and take a vacation or, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it is a little bit tough. And we talk about that in our book, The Productive Person, kind of like the entrepreneur's work-life balance and how that's such a tough thing. It's a tough thing to balance. So you really have to be pretty strict with yourself and make sure that you have that work-life balance. I'm kind of, I go after my dad in the sense that I'm a little bit of I lean on the workaholic side. So I love to have fun, but I'm also will work till I drop. So I have to remind myself of that as well.
So you never have a time on, say, like a Tuesday afternoon when you think, I just lay on the sofa with my hands down my trousers and watch Rocky VI or something?
I definitely do. It's not a whole lot, but it's those times that, I don't know, what I've found is that when I do that kind of stuff, it's usually when I'm avoiding something really important and I'm avoiding something that really needs to get done. So those are kind of like triggers to me. Like when I check my email for like a lot, or when I start getting on Facebook or doing all those kind of just getting my mind away from work, that's usually a sign that the next task on my plate is probably pretty important and pretty high leverage. So it's going to take some effort. So that's why I'm trying to distract myself.
And when you find yourself watching Rocky V, it must be a really big thing you're trying to get away from. Because that was a bad one, wasn't
it? Yeah. So that would be a huge sign that's what I'm about to do is pretty important.
So is this part of what you teach your college kids, really, that you have to become disciplined, you have to do it? It's not easy. You know, we this show is very much about the leap of faith. It's very much about following your path and finding your true passions and inspiring people not to settle. And as we always say, if you're in a job and you love it, then great, you know, do it even better so you love it even more. But if you're not in a job that you like, or even if you're in a relationship and your boyfriend or your girlfriend are doing you nutting and you don't want to be there anymore, you have got options and you can change, and it's not going to kill you, is it?
Yeah, no, that's totally. And when we're working with like college students and entrepreneurs, I mean, that's the one thing we say before we even bring them on to coach them is like, hey, look, this is going to be really hard. There's going to be times where you're going to hate it. It's going to be really rough. But at the end of the day, you're really going to love it, and it's going to change your life. And, you know, I'm a real big proponent of work hard, play hard. So when it's like you know, we would, working with our guys is, hey, you show up, you do your work, and we work very smart and we work efficient and we go just 90 miles an hour. But then when we cut off from work, we're off. And it's kind of a work hard, play hard mentality.
So let's share with the listeners what you actually do for a living, because it's kind of unclear. Obviously, you're an entrepreneur. You teach younger kids and college graduates how to become an entrepreneur, but how do you actually earn your money then? Yeah,
so in the past I've done, so I kind of, one of the places I got my start, which I'm sure we'll talk about this later, is it's through an internship program that teaches college students how to run their own business, and it's through an exterior painting business is the way they teach them. And basically it's like the whole model is teach students how to run a business by actually running a business. A crazy concept, I know, but it's, you know, it's a painting business. And the reason they do painting is because it's, number one, it's seasonal. So when college students are out of school is when people need paint jobs. Two is it's higher margins. And then three is the fact that it's not too crazy hard to teach. So you can teach someone painting fairly easily. So that's what we did. And I got my start there, ran like a 6-figure business as a freshman in college, and got number one in the company, like for the whole country. And that was like a big milestone for me, where I really gained confidence, like, wow, I can do this. And then the next year they brought me back, and I taught a few other college students how to run their own business. And then that like they all did well, and they kind of have like a rewards cruise at the end of the year. And so that was always a fun moment, is like all three of my guys got on the rewards cruise, which means they ran over a $55,000 business. And so they all got on this cruise, and it was awesome to just have all my guys there and just celebrate and look back on how much they had grown over the past few months, how much I had grown as a leader and a mentor and all those things. And it's just a remarkable experience, but it really is like the whole work hard, play hard. Like, we worked really hard, but we also had a lot of fun, and it was cool. Just an inspiring opportunity to be around so many. It was for the first time in my life where I was around so many inspiring people. And I'd always found, like, in business, I was kind of like the big fish in a small pond. And then student painters is like, I was so challenged because there were just other people that were actually weird like I was, you know, had that itch to run their own business. And so that was a fun experience. And then since then, you know, just been working on some other businesses and put out a couple best-selling books, and, you know, kind of have been working with people marketing on that. And then we just launched a program now where we're taking people going from book idea to bestseller in 3 months. So we've kind of got a system that we've got, and we're really good at the marketing part. And then we also have a system for writing. So we help people out with that as well.
So where do you learn this, Chandler? Is it just kind of gut intuition, or is it something you've studied, or are you looking at other movers and shakers and taking the best from each of them?
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit of it was maybe subconscious growing up, because my dad ran a business. It was a construction business, and I saw how hard he worked, and I also saw just how much freedom he could have as an entrepreneur. You know, he could make it to all my baseball games and football games and all that. And he could, like, my mom could come as well. We could go on vacation. when other people would have to work. And I think I saw that and I was like, wow, I really want that freedom one day. And I want to create that freedom and kind of create that lifestyle for my family. And I think subconsciously that was kind of instilled in me when I was younger. And then as I grew up, it was just, I was infatuated with it. And especially now, I'm studying a lot and studying top marketers and reading books and all that stuff. But more than that, just really going after what I want.
Because that's quite aware, I would have thought, at quite an early age. Because I obviously feel that now because I've got kids. And there was a part of my life where I couldn't go to any plays or any school sports days or whatever because I was at work. I just couldn't get the time off. And I was very aware that I was missing out on stuff. That's one of the reasons why I took the leap of faith and I've created this to get some sort of time freedom. But to be a younger person before you get kids, to be able to look at and be aware that your dad is there and it's unusual because most dads are actually at work and they haven't got that opportunity. I think that's quite clued up.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, David. And I think, honestly, the biggest thing that keeps people from taking that leap is that they don't know it's possible. And in their mind, it seems impossible. So, like, some people will hear what I've done or, like, about me running a business. Like, I'm still only 21. I'm still really young. But some people will hear about that and they just think, wow, that's insane. But to me, it doesn't seem that crazy, Like I have friends here and he was telling me about how all he had ever been around was people who were driven to work towards corporate. And he went to school for that and got an MBA and he's surrounded by people. And he talked about how inspiring it was to be around me and my other friends who are all entrepreneurs and like just how that just you can literally see it in his eyes, how the belief just starts to turn. Because when you start to surround yourself by people that are doing it, you start to actually believe that it's possible.
Absolute truth. But how do people do that? If they're in a job where they're surrounded by moaning minis and it's a negative environment, and I've been in jobs where you meet somebody at the coffee machine and you say, "You all right?" And they go, "I would be if I wasn't here," or "I'll be all right on Friday," and all that kind of stuff. How can people surround themselves with positive, enthusiastic go-getters if their surroundings isn't littered with that?
Yeah, that's a great question, David. And I've got an answer for it that I think people might not like, but it's a true answer. And that's just the fact that you have to work at it. And the chances are people who are inspiring, unless you live in a place that's an entrepreneurial hub, chances are they're probably not in your city. There's probably a few of them that you're really going to have to look for, and you have to put yourself in those situations. But chances are they're in other cities as well. So the thing I would say is conferences really helped. So that means you actually have to pony up and pay some money to go to a conference. It'll be the best investment you've ever made in your life. And for $1,000, maybe less, maybe more, people see that and they think, oh my gosh, that's insane. And yet people pay $10,000, $20,000 a year to go to college where you, in my opinion, you don't learn half, or like I learned way more at a conference than I probably would at a whole semester of college. And it's only $1,000 or $2,000 at the very most, unless you're going to like a big conference. But I would suggest going to conferences, going to entrepreneurial meetups locally. They do exist. You can check meetup.com. You can see meetups of startup entrepreneurs. And really there's a ton of ways, but you just have to actually put yourself in those uncomfortable positions. Like they probably won't be comfortable at first because you're going to feel like you're the only guy at the show who's not an entrepreneur, but put yourself out there. And what you'll find is that entrepreneurs in those communities love it. They love meeting people who they feel like they can help to get their freedom and help them get out of their corporate job or whatever. I know I love it. And those are some of my favorite people because they're inspiring to see them kind of taking little mini leaps of faith themselves. It inspires me to take bigger leaps in my business.
It's amazing nowadays, though, that you can create confidence, you can create champions across the globe. Because when I started this, there was one show that inspired me to do this, and I mention it all the time, and it's called The Solopreneur with Michael O'Neill, and he was guest number 100. So if you listen back to guest number 100, then he was the man. And during that show, I used to drop comments on there because I was very inspired by the content he was doing. And another chap, Dwayne Scott, big shout out to you, Dwayne. He started commenting, and we kind of got friendly over that. Now, we contact each other on Facebook, and out of all the people on earth, he's the one that supports me the most, and he's the one that challenges me, and he's the one that sort of pushes me on. And his friendship means the world to me. And that's another example of being able to find positive, enthusiastic support in an online environment. You don't actually have to go to real people. You can go to these people that maybe you've never even met them, and maybe you never will, but virtually you can build up this friendship, and it's so powerful. So Facebook groups, really useful. And if you're looking for some kind of, I don't know, entrepreneurial venture, look on Facebook, and I bet you there's going to be a group there with like-minded people that will help you along.
Yeah, that's a great point, David. And that's funny. I think we got an interview with him in like a week and a half or something, but with Michael. But one thing I wanted to say on that is, like, I've forcefully put that into my life as well. Like, I live in an entrepreneur house right now, and it's a house full of entrepreneurs. So it's people who are living the same lifestyle, and they inspire me every day. They inspire me to be healthier, to grow my business. They help me with that stuff. Like, we brainstorm on that. You know, it's like, it's not just all about business. Like, we have fun, we get healthy, we like, you know, just all that stuff too. But it's like, we're all here helping each other grow our businesses. And you've probably heard the quote, it's the Jim Rohn quote of, you know, you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And I couldn't believe in that more. If you take your income and average your 5 closest friends, usually your income will fall right in the middle of that. So just hanging out with people who are where you want to be, or who inspire you, that's so huge and so important. And important enough for me that I moved across the country to be in this entrepreneur house. And in 3 weeks, I'm about to move across the country again to start up another entrepreneur house.
You know, that is really go-getting, isn't it? Because I beat myself up a bit that I spent so many years going through the motions as I see it now. I thought I was building a career, and I was working up in the city of London, and I was going up there every single day to try to build a career. Now I look back on it with new eyes, and I think to myself, oh, I was building the wrong career. I should have been doing this. But even that, I was in a routine. And you don't seem to have a routine. You seem to be able to take these steps that for your age, and I mean that with the greatest respect, as a 21-year-old, I wouldn't have been anywhere near that, setting up a house and setting up businesses and all that kind of stuff. Are you absolutely fearless? Or does it still scare you when you think to yourself, I'm comfortable in this house, I've been here for a while, I like this, but then I'm going to throw it up in the air and go off and do something else? Does that not kind of make you think, oh, I'll just stay here a little bit longer?
Oh, David, it scares the crap out of me, but it's one of those things where I just know I got to do it. And I was actually talking with one of the guys in the house here, and it's tough the last 2 or 3 times I've moved. It's tough because, you know, you have a bunch of friends and you're really getting plugged in, and yeah, it's tough, and yes, it scares me for sure. But what I've kind of found is that when that happens, that's a huge sign that it's actually something I need to do. Because when I push myself out of my comfort zone like that and set myself up for failure, then I've never done that and it not be an amazing experience and like change my life and taught me so much. So that definitely happens, and I wouldn't consider myself a risky person, but you know, so like, I don't know. It's one thing that I continue to try to work on. It's like, all right, I want to take more risks like that. I want to do more stuff like that, push myself out of my comfort zone. Because I know that every time I do it, it just blows my mind and changes my life.
It makes me, it astonishes me. I was going to be quite gentle then, but no, it astonishes me that I'm having these conversations on a daily basis, and all these people are very successful in their fields, and they're literally all doing exactly the same things. They are looking after themselves physically, making sure that they're healthy and fit. They're self-developing themselves. They are surrounding themselves with positive people. They are living right on the edge of fear and knowing that fear is the thing that will allow you to grow by conquering that and moving you into new areas. And it seems amazing that if somebody isn't listening to these shows day after day after day, that they're not picking up with these threads and think to themselves, this is the blueprint. This is the blueprint. All I've got to do is find my area, and these guys, these ladies, are already telling me what I need to do. But they don't. People don't. And they kind of throw out obstacles. It's madness, isn't it?
Yeah, and honestly, David, it's one of those things where I think so many of your listeners right now, they know what they want to do and they know how to do it. They just can't get themselves out of their head, and they can't actually, they just, like, they're so deep in their head that they're just not taking action on it. And they're scared of failure. So because they know, they probably know what they need to do, but there's a difference between knowing and doing.
I would have been scared of you, Chandler Bolt. Over 100 episodes ago, I would have thought, oh, Chandler Bolt, he's an entrepreneur, he's 20, why would he want to talk to me? And just the fact that you've got like a superhero name, haven't you? Chandler Bolt. I've kind of spent the afternoon sort of saying your name. I don't know why. Who are you speaking to? I'm speaking to Chandler Bolt. Whoa, Chandler Bolt. It's got that kind of connotation to it. But I would have been terrified to speak to you at the very beginning. And now I'm 100 shows in. I wouldn't care if Richard Branson was on. It's just another person. It's that you overcome those fears in your head that hold you in place. And we should really look at those fears. And it's true. It's almost like a compass, because when you are scared of something, that is only because it's new. And unless you conquer those newness, those new fears, then you're going to stay where you are. That's obvious as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, David. And I mean, think about it. How did you? I feel like the point's illustrated perfectly there with your podcast. Is how did you get to the point you're at now?
Step by step by step. The very first thing I had to do was overcome the fear of speaking on the mic. Then I had to overcome the fear of actually reaching out and saying to people, will you come on this show? I haven't recorded anything. You don't know who I am. I don't know if it's going to be a success, but I'd like you to be on the show. That was a big one. Yeah. And then once I got into it, I had fear all the way through. And even when I got to the point of 10, 15, 20, 30 episodes recorded, I still didn't fancy launching them because I thought, oh, it's not going to work. Then I got to 50. And funnily enough, when I got to about 40, I hit this wobble period. And I don't know what it was. I should have eased into it by that time. But it was almost like the nervous energy that I'd taken to get it going. I then had to justify it by keeping it going. And that was the hardest part. Does that kind of make sense? It was like effort that I'd put in, but I suddenly thought to myself, am I able to keep this effort going to maintain it? Yeah.
So how would you say that you got over those fears, like the fears of asking people to get on the show, of recording on the mic, and like all that stuff?
Just doing it. Just simply doing it. I can't put it more simply than that. The very first email that I sent out, I actually sent to Elton John because I knew that he wouldn't respond. I knew it would go off into wherever it goes, into Elton John land, and I'm not going to get a response. And of course I didn't. But it made me realise, I pressed that. And then the next one I did, I got a response. And then the next one I got a response. Cool. So I kind of overcome that fear. And it is. I'm still frightened on a daily basis of doing this. I'm frightened that when I connect with somebody, it's going to be dreadful. And out of 150, I've had one that was dreadful, absolutely dreadful. And I stopped it halfway through, and I said to the person, "This isn't working. This is dreadful." And the person was yawning all the way through the show and that kind of thing. So I just pulled up on it. But yeah, it generally
Good
is.
For you.
If you think that it's going to go well and you put your effort into it as much as you possibly can, people will respond, and people will respond in a supportive way that helps you overcome those fears. That's what I think now.
For sure. That's a great story, David. And I honestly, man, I couldn't agree more. I was thinking on this exact conversation that we're having right now a couple days ago, and I came up with this quote. Just kind of, it came into my head, and it was this idea that content without context is useless. And really, because I was thinking back to my business and student painters and just all these different things. And I realized that just doing, even when I didn't know what I was doing, that's why I was successful. And just doing student painters, when I came back to my business classes became a lot more interesting, and I learned more from my business classes because I had context. I had something to relate to. So when the professor was teaching on a particular lesson, I could say, oh, I remember this customer where that happened. I remember this employee where that happened, all that stuff. So I think people just overload themselves with content and they don't take action, which is just pointless, because unless you have some context for the stuff you're listening to, so like unless you're reading a book about something you're currently doing, then there's no point in reading the book, because there's no context for you to use it with.
I'm going to play you a little speech, and I want you to tell me what you think about this. This is a very short one. Have a listen to this.
My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job. And our family had to do whatever we could to survive. I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love.
What do you think of that?
That's great. I've heard that. Who is that?
That is Jim Carrey, the comedian Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Because you're doing what you love,
totally.
aren't you? You love your life at the moment.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's great.
So why did you take that risk? As he's saying, it's easier to fail, or it's as easy to fail on things you don't like, so you might as well take a chance on what you love. Why did you?
I just couldn't see it any other way. I really couldn't. And to me, it was worse to not try and live my life with regret than it was to try and fail. I would rather, so like when I made the decision to drop out of school, I would have rather had that happen and fail and me have to go back to school than finish school out and wonder and wish what would have happened if I would have stopped doing something I hated.
And do you regret dropping out of school?
Not one bit.
So do you not have, because in our sort of education system, you generally will go through all the years until you get a series of exams, and you can get a qualification in maths, you can get a qualification in geography, you can get a qualification in that. So you can kind of come out of our education system with very weird qualifications. But my understanding of the Americans is unless you go all the way through, you don't graduate, and you don't come out with a diploma, and that's like your education's not finished.
Yeah, no. So I mean, I'm weird, and it was actually a nervous thing for me when I dropped out. Is like I didn't want to tell people I dropped out, because people hear you're a college dropout and they think you're a loser. They think like, oh, you just dropped out because you couldn't handle it, and you're probably not doing anything with your life. So like that was like a fear of mine, you know. Like I I actually studied abroad before I dropped out because I wanted to travel some. And so I would tell people that I just got back from studying abroad and wouldn't tell them that I dropped out.
What did your mum and dad say when you said you were going to drop out?
At first they questioned it, like I think any good parent should. They really questioned it, asked me why I wanted to do that. I think they definitely wanted me to stay in school because neither one of them graduated college. And so they definitely wanted me to stay at school in first, but then they realized that I was very serious about it, and they just had faith in me, that they just knew that I wasn't just going to drop out and just not do anything. They knew that it was something that I was really passionate about, and that I was actually going after what I loved, and I'd put a lot of thought into it. I'd talked to a lot of my mentors. I'd prayed about it. Like I just really put a lot into the decision. It wasn't just off of a whim.
Did you ever think you will go back and finish your qualifications? Because my understanding is people do that as well.
Yes, some people do. I don't think I ever will. I went to school to learn how to run a business and learn more about business. That I knew that's what I wanted, and I just thought to myself like, oh, finally a chance to learn business. Like in high school, I didn't get to learn as much about business. Like finally a chance I can take business classes. And then I got put in all these prerequisite classes that I hated, like sciences and all that. And I was like, well, this is not fun. And I don't know, I just eventually reached a point where it was like I came to college not for the degree, but for the learning. And so when the learning wasn't that good, it didn't make sense to me anymore. And when I was I kind of came to this realization. I was learning so much through the businesses I was running, and I was in like kind of a program that teaches you how to start a software company, and I was learning all this stuff from outside of school, and and from people who had ran a business before. And then I realized, like, in school, I'm learning how to run a business from someone who's never ran a business, and that didn't really make much sense to me. So that was kind of a big point for me where I was like, yeah, I should probably just drop out.
Because I have a problem now with the education system, and I've mentioned this a few of the episodes, that there is a lot to be said about education. You know, you need to be able to read, you need to be able to write, you need to be able to count and all those kind of stuff. But do you really need to know what the Romans did? And do you really need to know how to speak Latin and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of it that I would much rather my kids go through and they focus in on kind of life skills, the kind of things that you would need when you actually come out. Because I don't use half of the stuff. I don't even think I use 10% of the stuff that I learned when I was at school. But I'm still trying to support my kids and say to them, yeah, you need to go through and work hard and get your qualifications because it's the right thing to say. But deep down, I think every adult listening to this will go, yeah, to be honest, how much am I using that I learned at school?
Oh, yeah, it's the street smarts. I always thought that growing up in school was like, I would see my friends get better grades than them or get better grades than me. And I'd be like, oh, well, I have street smarts, which is what's really important. I know a little bit about business, and like I can survive out in the real world. So like, I don't know. I think I always use that to kind of justify like me not getting as good of grades. But I'm a firm believer in that. Street smarts are so much more important than book smarts, because you have to in the real world learn how to adapt, how to talk to people, how to do all these things that by doing you're going to learn, not by a textbook.
Is that just inbuilt though? We call it over here street savvy and street smart. Is that just kind, or street wise? Is that just kind of inbuilt? Is that an inherent talent that you have, or can you develop it?
Oh, I think you can definitely develop it. It's one of those. It comes from doing. So if you want to have more street smarts, just put yourself in those uncomfortable situations like we were talking about earlier.
So it's all about conquering your fear. To be able to get a kick-ass life, it is about dreaming big, taking the leaps of faith, doing the things that are uncomfortable, and just keep on working at it, getting past your failures and hitting successes. And then hopefully you get more successes, you'll get a load more failures, but ultimately you will end up, fingers crossed, with where in the place that you should be. Is it as simple as that, or am I making it as a sort of naive statement?
I think it's as simple as that, David. And I think if you ever get to a point to where you're super comfortable, that's when everything kind of grinds to a halt. For me, I mean, I like being really, really comfortable and just settling and not having anything to work towards. That just seems pretty boring. Like there's always fun stuff. There's always situations you can put yourself into that you're going to grow and you're going to have a lot of fun. And so for me, at least, that's what life's all about, is experiencing, having fun, and the newness that comes from like just jumping headfirst into crazy, ridiculous things and crazy, ridiculous goals and just fun stuff you want to do.
I chatted to a bloke, and I've chatted to, well, we say blokes over here, and I've been told in America you say guys and stuff. But I was talking to a guy who he dreams big, and then he dreams bigger, and he is a total believer now that the bigger you dream, the actual easier it is to achieve. It's a real kind of goes against logic, just purely because people do not dream as big as you. So if you dream bigger than anyone, you've got less competition.
Yeah. Who are you talking to on that?
That was a gentleman on episode 82 called Eric James. And I keep on telling this story. It's one of my favourite stories now that I wax lyrical, but very, very quickly, because I'm sure our listeners have heard this many, many times. But this guy, he decided that he wanted to go up to space.
Poker player, right? Poker player in space. Yeah, I know Eric. Yeah.
Do you know Eric?
Yeah, he's a friend of mine.
Oh, right, yeah. So he's now going up to space with Richard Branson, or he's put himself in a 50-50 position to get into space. And by taking like 5 or 6 steps where he plotted them down and just took action. And he got to a point and Branson said, yeah, you're only the second person who has asked to do this. Now, that kind of blows my mind, and it's the most amazing story that I keep on telling to everyone, even if they don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Because it kind of, your logical side goes, no, hang on, this is never going to happen. That's too big. But then he's gone for it, and everyone else is not, and so he gets what he wants.
Yeah, he snuck into that Richard Branson gathering and then got to talk to him and pitched him on that, and that's how he got that.
Yeah, and he was
crazy.
Yeah, he was in a room full of other people that have all kind of managed to get in as well. And Richard Branson comes in and he kind of knows that everyone's pulled a fast one and managed to get past the security guys and stuff. And it was these hustlers.
And there's a lesson there. Notice that's who he wants to talk to. Those are the guys who he wants to be in a room with. The guys who hustled and snuck in. That's
brilliant, though, isn't it? I actually get excited thinking about that. So how do you know Eric then?
I met him at an event out in Colorado. So kind of bring it full circle. We talk about a meeting, like how do you surround yourself with people like that? Like I went to a conference and it wasn't cheap. And it was kind of a leap of faith for me. I was like, man, it's a lot of money. This is after I dropped out of school.
How much?
$2,000.
That's a lot, isn't it? That is a lot.
Yeah, I mean, for a college dropout who's barely scraping by, living off of his savings, and starting a new business, like that was a good bit for me at the time, And so I spent that, and that was just for the conference. That wasn't for the plane ticket out there and all that stuff. So, and my she's like, oh my gosh, Chandler, $2,000, like. That's like, what? She couldn't believe it. And then I met so many amazing people. I met Eric. That conference has already paid for itself so many times over. And it hasn't been that long since I've been there. It's already paid for itself.
You invest in yourself.
Yeah. And I love that you said that, David. The whole fact about going for big dreams, because I always think back to the 4-hour work week, which totally blew my mind and rocked my world as a college student and an entrepreneur. And I think about how he illustrates the point great in there, where he says, big dreams and bold dreams are more likely to happen than smaller ones. Because so he referenced like, okay, you're going to maybe take a trip to Ohio, or you might take a trip to Hawaii. And both are going to involve an equal amount of planning. Which one do you think is going to fall through? The trip to Ohio probably is, because you're not nearly as excited about it. So it's actually, when you're going after bigger things, there's less competition and more of a chance that it'll actually happen. And he also referenced, like, you walk into a bar and you look around and there's a bunch of 7s, and then there's one just smoking hot 10, off the charts, beautiful, beautiful girl. And this really hit home for me because I'm a guy, but just the fact that the competition for all of the 7s is actually way higher, because all guys are like, oh, I can never get that girl. She's way out of my league, so I'm not even going to try. So the competition is actually harder for the set. It's like, so, but if you actually went for the beautiful girl that you really wanted to talk to, the competition's way less, and there's a better chance you'll actually get her.
I've got a theory on this as well. You've got me all excited, Chandler Bolt. Now, if you walk along the street, sometimes you see absolutely drop-dead gorgeous women with the most ugly blokes that you've ever seen in your life, and you think, how the hell has that happened? And this is how it happens. I totally believe that in that scenario, normal-looking gentlemen will walk into that place and go, oh, she's out of my league. I will go for the 7s. But the ugly bloke is so used to being turned down by everyone, he's used to rejection. And so the 10, who actually doesn't get asked by anyone because we all think she's out of our league, actually is sitting there quite lonely. So the ugly bloke just steams in, and he doesn't care. She's going to say no anyway. And she doesn't. She says yes. And that's how it happens.
Yep. That's great.
Is that the most truth you've ever had in an interview? That's going to change your life, isn't it?
For sure. And I think a lot of people listening, their jaw's probably on the floor, and they might go talk to some beautiful women.
That's it. Let's create babies. That's That's what we want. We want a baby boom across the world, and all of them's going to be called Chandler and David. What about that?
That's right. So from this interview, there might not be a lot of business started, just a lot of babies born.
That's not a bad life, though, is it, really?
Oh, man.
Is that not what you want? So what do you actually want? What do you want in life now? Because I am going to play the Steve Jobs speech in a moment. But as you are at the moment, what do you want? Because you seem to be having your cake and eat it.
Yeah. Oh, man. I want to push it. I want to really, really push and just have a lot of fun, grow my business. And honestly, I want to build an empire someday. I really want to build something that's just, when I leave this earth, it's like, wow, that guy made a difference. And he didn't just rake in a pile of cash, but he made a difference. Like, he actually changed a lot of people's lives, and the world was better because he was here. That's what I'm working towards. And also just raising a great family and teaching my kids some of the lessons we're talking about on this podcast, that all these things are possible. And I don't know, just if I can inspire others, have a lot of fun, get to do a lot of fun stuff, experience life, travel the world, all that stuff, like that's the end goal for me.
You're incredibly grounded for a 21-year-old. And when you said your age, I was a bit taken by surprise, actually, because you seem to be able to handle yourself in many different situations that would faze most people, even older people.
Well, thanks. I usually don't lead with the age because I find that turns people off. So I try to impress them first, and then I'll slip the age in the back.
So just before I play Steve Jobs' speech, is there, and I'm going to ask you afterwards, but I just want you to think about it. I ask most of our guests whether there is a big dot in their life that they can look back and they can go, yes, that was the moment when Chandler Bolt actually started becoming who he is. So I want you to just think about that while I play the words of Steve Jobs, because we're going to ask you about it afterwards. This is Steve Jobs.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college. But it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
So do those words to a 21-year-old guy, do they mean something? Do they make sense?
Definitely. I've listened to that speech before, and I even just listened to it right now, like I've got the chills. It's so amazing.
What is it that makes you chill? And if you can hear noise in the background, I've got this tremendous thunderstorm just occurring over my head at the moment. So if it's coming through on the mic, don't worry, I'm going to be professional and get through it. But it's getting a little bit scary. So what is it that sends chills down you about that speech?
It's just crazy because it's so true, and I can think back to. It's weird how so many dots were connected in my life, and it's amazing to think that if I wouldn't have taken that one opportunity, how different my life would be, and it just makes me I don't know, it just makes me kind of think about how many things like that are zooming by us in our everyday life. And if you're just stuck in that rut and stuck in something that you hate, you're going to have your head down and you're going to miss it. And that could be the thing that totally changes your life. And 10 years on down the road is the thing that you just look back and you're like, wow, I could not imagine life without that happening. But you miss it if you've got your head down and if you're just miserable in what you're doing.
So do you have a big dot? Do you have a moment in your life that you go, yes, that is when Chandler Bolt really started to become Chandler Bolt?
Absolutely. And it took me 2 seconds to think of it. It was a no-brainer. It was when, so freshman year of college, I went to college. I was really, really stoked to just get into college, learn about business and have a lot of fun, meet new people, all that. And it was probably 3 months in, I was extremely frustrated, maybe even 2 months in. I was just so frustrated because I felt like I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't learning the things I really wanted to learn. And I just wasn't interested in any of my classes, all that. And so I was just in this really rough place where I had a lot of uncertainty, and I was thinking about transferring, thinking about going to a different school, and just really just wasn't very happy. And that's when this opportunity came along, and that was the opportunity to work with student painters and to run my own business. And I kind of reluctantly said yes to that. It was something that on the surface should have been a no-brainer, but I was like, okay, yeah, I think I want to do this. And I committed to it, and I started running my business. And it was a 7-month crash course. I went from no business at all to a little over $100,000, and like just crazy tons of times of just trial and error and down in the dumps, and like just a roller coaster of highs and super, super, super lows, and just rough challenges. But I look back on that, and that's the point that kind of kicked it off. And since then, I would not be where I'm at in my life if it wasn't for that internship, and if it wasn't for that opportunity. And I can connect the dots to where my business partners now, met them through student painters. The house I'm living in now, met those somehow through student painters. Like it was like student painters. Then I went to conferences I wouldn't have went to. Then I got into an incubator program to learn how to run a software business. Then I met people there that I live with now, and great mentors. Like I wouldn't have written my first book because I wrote that with my mentor from that program. I probably wouldn't have written my second book. I wouldn't be running the business I am now, teaching other people how to write and market their own book. Like, it's insane to look back at all the things that just happened from that. And the funny thing is, David, that for that one moment, I had another internship, and all that started from one email. I got an email about this internship, and I told my buddy who was living in the dorm with me, I said, hey, Aaron, I can't go to this info session, but this sounds really cool. Can you check it out for me? And I got back from work that day, and he showed all the information to me, and I was like, this looks amazing. I'm going to call the guy. And he had his number, so I called him. And then I got an interview, and then it just kept going, and then I got the position and all this stuff. It was just crazy how, if I wouldn't have saw that email, it wouldn't have happened. And if I wouldn't have had the guts to call the guy out of the blue and say, hey, I wasn't at the info session, but I think you should give me an interview. Like, if I wouldn't have had the guts to do that, it wouldn't have started. And all those things that string off of that, probably wouldn't have dropped out of school. Like, I could honestly go on all day, but I'm sure it would be pretty boring. So I'm sure you don't want to hear it. But it's just crazy how many things stem off of that one leap of faith and that one opportunity.
I even find it madness that you're Chandler Bolt, I'm David Ralph, and there's a bloke called Eric James that we've both spoken to, and it just seems mad how that's occurring. And I'm getting those links all the time. And you could argue that, yes, we're speaking to sort of entrepreneurs and go-getters and all that kind of stuff. But come on, that's 3 people on the whole planet, and we know each other. Yeah.
And then I think, like we were saying, like Michael O'Neill, I'm going to be on his podcast in like a week and a half. Like, how crazy is that? Like, it's really a small world.
It certainly is. It certainly is. And let's take you back in time now. This is the end of the show, and this is the Sermon on the Mic. And this is when we send you back in time to have a one-on-one with your younger self. And if you could walk into a room and meet the young Chandler Bolt, what would you say to him? So I'm going to play the music, and when it fades out, you're up. This is the Sermon on the Mic.
Here we go with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic.
That's awesome, David. I would say, hey, Chandler, you're younger than you are now, which is kind of crazy because you're only 21 now. So you're young. You're a young guy, but you need to take chances. You need to get out there and go for what you really want and take risks, because they're really not that crazy as you might think they are when you actually get out there. So don't be afraid. Don't play it safe, and chase after what you want to do, because there's so much out there that you're not going to learn in your middle school or your high school. You're going to learn that there's maybe five things that you can do when you're in high school and in middle school, but then you're going to get out in the real world and realize that there's a million jobs and a million businesses that you can start. So just get out there and go after what you really want.
And when you walk into a bar and you see that hot 10 just steaming, that's what you...
Go right up to her and don't hesitate.
Just go straight into her and she'll be waiting for you.
Yep.
Chandler, the biggest sort of credit that I can say to you and the biggest praise that I would be proud if my son grows up to be like you. I think that you are setting your path out and you are taking responsibility for your future, and you're not taking an easy path. It's a difficult path, but it will pay you back big time. And I think that you are an inspiration to just not me, but all parents who are raising their kids, because there's a right way of doing it. I personally believe that you're doing it the right way.
Wow, David, that means a lot. Thank you so much. That's a huge compliment.
So how can...
Because your kid's your most important thing, so that really means a lot.
Absolutely, it certainly is. I want them to have a life that is interesting, and I know for many people, and myself for many, many years, it wasn't interesting. It was just a job, and it was where I went and what I did, and I want them. And I now kind of think that it's the less risky choice. Actually creating your own path instead of going into a company where they can ultimately just get rid of you whenever they want. I think being able to be streetwise and creating their future and having control of their own income producing production line, I think that is less risky now than it's ever been, and it's what I'm striving to encourage the world to do.
I couldn't agree more, man. And shameless plug, like my parents, I owe the world to my parents, and they taught me just so much. And it was amazing to see like how they lived their life and just lived out an example for me. And my brother and I actually, because my brother's he plays in a rock and roll band that like they travel around the world, and like that's his job. So we both kind of had success in totally different areas, but we realized that our parents, they really taught us these same 15 things. And even though he's a rock and roll star, I'm a business guy, like these 15 things were what kind of led to a lot of our success. And we wrote a book about it. It's called Breaking Out of a Broken System. It's got all those in it, and it's got our two different sides of the story. So Seth writes on those 15 things, I write on them. So it's like, as an artist, you can relate to him. Business guy, you can relate to me. You can read them both. But that was a charity project. So if anybody out there wants to check out the book, like I don't make any money off of it. We just did it as a charity project, and it's actually buy one book, save one life. But that's kind of, if you're looking for some of those things as a parent, even that you can teach your kids, like that's just a great example of that. And those are like 15 just great things that our parents taught us.
We will put the link on the show notes. And I'll be honest, I was disappointed that your brother wasn't Usain Bolt. I thought it was going to be that.
He's my brother from another mother.
Yeah, that would have been perfect. So how do our listeners actually connect with you, Chandler?
Yeah, so if they want to reach out, they can email me. It's Chandler@theproductiveperson.com, or just find me on Facebook, Chandler Bolt. That's the best spot, and I'm on there, and that's an easy place to keep up with people.
We'll put all the links on the show notes. Chandler, thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots. It's been absolutely inspirational to me. Please come back again when you have more dots to join up, because I do believe that by joining up those dots and connecting our past, it's the best way to build our futures. Chandler Bolt, thank you so much.
David, thanks for having me, man. This has been an amazing interview. Great job.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice That Every Successful Entrepreneur Practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.